When you hear the saying, leaves of 3, let it be, chances are the first plant you think of is the poison ivy. It also counts for the poison oak and the poison sumac, but those we will have a look at another day. It may also lead to misidentification of other 3-leafed plants, such as blackberries or the American hawk peanut. Anyway, sometimes confused for its significantly more posh counterpart, the English ivy, including by a certain Batman villain, the poison ivy is actually surprisingly difficult to identify. Formerly considered just a single species, we nowadays recognize 3 separate species of poison ivy: the eastern poison ivy, the western poison ivy, and the Asian poison ivy. The former 2 are native to North America, and the latter is native to East Asia. Most of our observations are attributed to the eastern poison ivy, which is why we will focus on it. You would think its leaves are what makes this plant recognizable, but Virginia Tech researchers found that poison ivy exhibits enormous amounts of leaf variation and that there is no clear ubiquitous poison ivy look. They also identified poison ivy plants with 5 leaves instead of 3, or leaflets to be precise. Basically, the conclusion was, if you're trying to identify poison ivy by its leaves alone, good luck, because it's probably not going to work. Instead, they recommend wearing protective clothing and immediately washing any potentially exposed area with soap and warm water. That is, ideally within 5 to 10 minutes of contact. Fun fact, this research was conducted during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, which apparently led to a rash of encounters with poison ivy as people ventured outside to explore. So, poison ivy is actually 3 separate species with a lot of variability. But what we can say more generally is that poison ivy can take on the form of a shrub or a vine. And, as a vine, it can climb by making use of hair-like aerial adhesive roots. It is also not a true ivy, but rather a member of the cashew and sumac family. Furthermore, while birds, insects and deer will happily chow down on it, and most animals are unbothered by it, we humans should avoid it. That is because the whole plant is filled with an oily resin called urushiol that can cause swelling and blistering rash on contact, though that response may be delayed by several days. However, it is not exactly true that poison ivy leaves are covered in poison. When you brush an intact plant, nothing will happen. Urushiol is only released when the plant is damaged. Of course, leaves and such can easily be damaged by passing animals, nibbling insects, or a strong wind. So maybe just be careful and don't touch it. Urushiol can also remain active for several years, so handling dead leaves or vines can cause a reaction. If you did come in contact with it, if you're not allergic to urushiol, again, nothing will happen. Yes, it is actually our own immune system that is a troublemaker here. It is likely that poison ivy did not develop urushiol as a defense mechanism against larger animals like us, but rather against microbes, against which it is indeed very effective. That may even be beneficial for those animals that feed on it. When you get even the tiniest of drops of urushiol on your skin, it causes a reaction by interacting with your skin cells, specifically with those cells that produce a protein called CD1A. CD1A proteins are produced by these cells to help spot invaders and sick cells. They do this by binding to specific fats, including oils, marking and showing them to our immune cells. Once our watchful warriors, the T cells, are presented with such marked urushiol, they choose violence. They do this by releasing the proteins interleukin-17 and interleukin-22. These interleukins cause signaling cascades and more proteins to jump into action, resulting in an inflammatory reaction. That is what makes your skin red and itchy with swelling and blisters. It's our immune system completely overreacting and doing everything in its power to eradicate a little bit of harmless oil. It's an allergy, one that most people have, 85 to 90% in fact. That also means that urushiol is not actually a poison, but rather an allergen. But allergen ivy doesn't quite have the same ring to it, does it? Actually, I suppose since poison ivy is also not an ivy, maybe it should be allergen shrub? Allergen cashew? No, that's also confusing. Maybe more confusing. Anyway, while immunity may seem like quite the superpower, it is believed that increased exposure increases the likelihood of developing a sensitivity. Meaning, if you're immune now, you might not be when you touch it again. Sensitivity may decrease with age though, due to a less active immune system. We sure are kept on our toes. What is easily forgotten is that urushiol will also linger on your skin and on objects. So basically don't touch anyone or anything that came in contact with it and may still be covered in the oil, because that's not how you get the role for poison ivy. They'll just get you that rash. While I found surprisingly little mention of medicinal uses of poison ivy, it has been reported that several plants in its genus Toxicodendron have been used as herbal medicines in Southeast Asia for a long time. research from 2024 also provides a theoretical basis for some of these traditional medicinal uses, supporting their validity. Furthermore, some promising bioactive compounds have been identified inside them, so plants in this genus may hold potential for new drugs. Extracts from this genus exhibited antibacterial, antioxidant, neuroprotective, anti-cancer, and, ironically, anti-inflammatory properties. Maybe the poison ivy's medicinal potential has been overlooked a bit. I'm curious to see what we might still learn about it. While our immune systems don't seem to like it very much, poison ivy is an important part and great contribution to forests in its native habitat for wildlife and pollinators alike, and it should be treated with respect, not with hatred. Now if only we could tell that to our immune cells.